Imagine standing at the altar, your heart racing, about to marry the love of your life, when suddenly you expose a secret that leaves everyone in the room gasping. A secret so twisted it involves not just your groom, but your own sister. What happened next will shock you and change everything. How did it all go wrong? Let's find out. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Emily had always dreamed of this day. She was in her early 30s, a teacher at a local high school, and in the eyes of everyone who knew her, she had everything. A successful career, a close-knit group of friends, and of course, her loving fiancé, Jack. He was everything she could have wanted: tall, handsome, successful in his career, and always with a smile that lit up the room. They'd been together for 3 years, and Emily couldn't wait to walk down the aisle and start their life together. But beneath her excitement, there was something she couldn't shake, a lingering worry she hadn't fully acknowledged. Jack, with his sharp suits and undeniable charm, was the kind of man everyone admired. He had a way of making people feel special, and his confidence was infectious. He'd planned every detail of their wedding meticulously, always ensuring Emily felt like a queen. But there was something about him, something that didn't sit right with her sometimes. His confidence, his seemingly effortless success, hid an arrogance that Emily often overlooked. He didn't always treat her with the warmth she deserved, and there were moments when she caught him looking at others a little too closely, especially her sister Grace. Grace, Emily's younger sister, was everything Emily wasn't. Grace was wild, fun, always the life of the party. She didn't have the same steady career path, but she was the type to grab life by the horns, living every moment with energy and boldness. She'd always joked about stealing Jack from Emily, saying, "If you don't marry him soon, I might just swoop in." It was funny at first, something playful they'd all laugh about. But Emily started to notice that Grace wasn't joking as much anymore. In fact, she noticed the way Jack looked at Grace, something in his eyes that made her skin crawl. Emily tried to ignore it. It was nothing, right? Just her mind playing tricks on her. But deep down, she couldn't silence that small voice that said, "Something's wrong." But what Emily didn't know was that her world was about to shatter. And it all began the moment her fiancé looked at her sister in a way that didn't seem right. What's at risk here isn't just a wedding day. It's trust, love, and family, all of it hanging by a thread. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with excitement. Emily couldn't help but smile as she tried on her dress for the last time, imagining the look on Jack's face when he saw her walking down the aisle. Her mother's tears, Grace's playful teasing, and the warm, bustling chaos of the final preparations. It all felt like a dream. Everything seemed perfect. Jack had been at the forefront of it all, organizing every detail with precision. He was the one who made sure the invitations went out on time, the venue was just right, and the caterer knew exactly how to serve the perfect meal. Emily couldn't help but admire his drive and attention to detail. It was exactly why she'd fallen for him. But as the days ticked by, something kept nagging at her, something she couldn't place. It wasn't the wedding plans, or the excitement, or even the nerves that usually came with marrying the love of your life. No, it was a subtle shift in the air, a change in the way Jack looked at Grace. The flirtatious remarks that seemed innocent at first, jokes about how Grace could steal him away, had grown into something more. Emily started noticing small things. Jack spending more time talking to Grace, laughing a little too loudly at her jokes, their private conversations filled with a warmth that seemed just a little too intimate. One evening, Emily had stayed late at the venue with Grace, helping with decorations. As she stepped out for a quick break, she saw Jack standing by the front door, talking to Grace, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. It wasn't the touch that bothered Emily. It was the way Grace leaned into him, the way Jack's eyes lingered a moment too long. When they saw her, they quickly pulled apart, but the damage was already done. The unease that had been growing in Emily's chest began to swell, but Emily, ever the optimist, pushed the thought to the back of her mind. She reminded herself that this was probably just her imagination running wild. After all, Jack had always been a gentleman, and Grace was just being playful, wasn't she? Still, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. She began to notice it more and more. Grace would casually brush her hand against Jack's arm when they were in a group, and Jack's smile would linger just a little too long when he looked at her. There was something happening here, something Emily couldn't ignore, but she didn't know what it was. The wedding day finally arrived. Emily woke up early, her heart beating fast with excitement and nervousness. It was everything she had dreamed of. The perfect day. The church smelled of fresh flowers, the air was crisp, and the sun was shining just right. But beneath the beauty, beneath the joy of the moment, Emily's heart was heavy with a sense of dread she couldn't explain. Her phone buzzed with texts from her friends and family, all excited for the day ahead. She was getting married to the love of her life, but the voice in her head was growing louder, whispering, "Something's not right. Something's wrong." As she walked into the venue, every eye was on her. Guests smiled, whispered, admired her beauty. She couldn't help but feel a flutter of pride as she saw the admiration in their eyes. But then, she caught sight of Jack and Grace talking near the altar. She watched them from a distance, and for a moment, the world around her seemed to blur. Grace was laughing at something Jack had said, her hand placed lightly on his chest. And Jack. Jack was smiling, his eyes soft, his voice filled with a warmth that made Emily's stomach churn. It was the look of someone who wasn't just talking to a sister-in-law, but someone he shared something deeper with. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment she felt the weight of the world crash down on her. She quickly turned away, trying to shake the feeling, but it lingered. The unease, the fear, the creeping suspicion. It was all too much to ignore now. She was standing on the edge of something terrible, and she couldn't look away. But what the bride didn't know was that the man she loved had been hiding a betrayal for months, one that would change everything. She entered the church and took her place at the front, her hands shaking as she gripped the bouquet. Jack stood at the altar, looking every bit the part of the perfect groom. But behind that smile, behind the perfect suit and polished demeanor, Emily could feel the darkness lurking. And the deeper she looked, the more it became clear. The man she thought she knew, the man she was about to marry, was someone she didn't recognize at all. And as the ceremony continued, she could feel the tension rising, the weight of the truth inching closer with every step she took. It was almost as if everyone else was blind to it, but Emily couldn't look away. The groom and sister were sharing looks that told a very different story, and soon Emily would have to decide, was she ready to face the truth, no matter the cost? The wedding was now just a few days away, and Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The growing tension between Jack and Grace was becoming harder to ignore, but she pushed it down, focusing on the final preparations for her big day. She tried to convince herself that her suspicions were just the product of pre-wedding nerves, that everything was fine, that nothing could ruin this perfect moment. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just nerves. It was the night before the wedding when everything changed. Emily was in her room trying to get some rest when she felt her phone buzz on the nightstand. It was a message from Grace, and for a moment, Emily felt a flutter of unease. She had just spoken to her sister earlier in the day. What could this be? She unlocked her phone, her thumb trembling slightly, and opened the message. It wasn't from Grace. It was from Jack. The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. "I can't wait to marry you after the wedding. We'll find a way to be together. You know I can't resist you." Her heart stopped. Emily sat frozen for a moment, staring at the screen as if it would disappear if she blinked. But it didn't. The words were there, burning into her mind, and with them, a truth that she couldn't deny anymore. Jack wasn't just being friendly with Grace. He wasn't just being charming like he always was. No, he had been hiding something far darker, something that had been brewing for months. And it wasn't just an innocent flirtation. It was an affair. Emily opened the thread of messages. She scrolled down, her hands shaking, each message like a nail in the coffin of everything she had believed in. The flirtation had started as something innocent, something playful, but it had escalated. There were photos, texts, video clips, proof that Jack and Grace weren't just two people who shared a bond. They had shared something far more intimate, something that had been building behind her back. But it wasn't just the affair that tore at her. It was the betrayal of the person who had been closest to her, her sister, the one person she thought she could trust the most. Grace wasn't just Jack's secret lover. She was Emily's own flesh and blood, someone who should have had her back, someone who she had shared everything with. The anger and shock were overwhelming, but even worse was the deep confusion. She couldn't understand how Grace, her sister, could do this to her. Emily's hands trembled as she dropped the phone onto the bed, staring at the ceiling as her mind raced. Every moment she had spent with Jack, every laugh, every promise, every "I love you," now felt hollow, like lies she had been told to keep her in the dark. The man she had trusted with her heart was now the man who had shattered it, and the woman she had shared her life with, the woman she had laughed with, cried with, loved with, had turned on her in the most painful way imaginable. Everything changed. She was no longer the excited bride counting down to her wedding day. She was now a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure of what to do next. If this part is making sense, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's really watching to this point. The air in Emily's room was thick with tension as she stared at her phone, the evidence of betrayal still burning in her hands. Every minute that passed felt like a countdown to something she couldn't control. Her mind raced. What should she do? She couldn't just ignore it. She couldn't walk down the aisle knowing the truth. But could she expose them? Could she ruin everything? Or worse, what if she was wrong? What if her mind had twisted the reality of the situation? The weight of the decision felt unbearable. But there was no going back now. With a heavy heart, Emily marched to the living room where Jack and Grace were laughing. Her hands shook, and as she walked into the room, every eye turned toward her. The laughter faded. "Emily." Jack's voice faltered as he stood up, looking guilty but trying to hide it with a forced smile. "Emily, what's wrong?" Grace asked, her voice too sweet, too innocent. The calm before the storm lasted only a second. Emily, in a voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Is this what's been going on? The texts? The pictures? The lies?" The silence in the room was deafening. Jack and Grace exchanged a look, a fleeting moment that sealed everything. Jack opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Grace, ever the one to deflect, tried to laugh it off. "Emily, you're overreacting. It's not what you think." But Emily wasn't having it. "No, it's exactly what I think." The confrontation exploded. Jack tried to apologize, but there was no sincerity in his voice. Grace, who had once been her confidant, stood there, defensive, hurt, but still holding on to the lies. The family that had once been so close was now at war. Emily's heart shattered, not just because of the betrayal, but because of the way her sister tried to justify it, making excuses that rang hollow. Everyone was questioning Jack's loyalty now. Emily's family was divided. Some blamed her for not seeing it sooner. Some whispered that she should have known. But the real question that haunted Emily was not just whether she could ever forgive Jack or Grace, but if she could ever live with herself knowing she'd stayed silent for so long. As the wedding day approached, Emily was left to wonder, should she reveal everything? Should she stand up for herself and face the truth? Or should she walk down the aisle, playing the part of the perfect bride, pretending that nothing had changed? What would you do in Emily's shoes? Would you expose the truth or keep it hidden, risking everything you've built? The moment arrived. Emily stood at the altar, the weight of the truth heavy in her chest, her hands trembling as she clutched her bouquet. Jack stood beside her, his face frozen in a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Grace stood nearby, her usual playful demeanor replaced by a tense, uncomfortable smile. As the ceremony began, Emily's heart raced, and for a moment, everything felt surreal. She could feel the eyes of the guests on her, the murmurs of excitement filling the air, but inside, everything was falling apart. She knew this was her only chance to confront the truth, to expose the betrayal that had shattered her world. With a calmness that belied the storm inside her, Emily stepped forward, holding up her phone for all to see. The room fell silent. Jack's face went pale as he realized what was happening. Emily pressed play, and the sound of Jack's voice filled the room. "I can't wait to marry you after the wedding. We'll find a way to be together." The text messages followed. Proof of the affair, the photos, the lies, all laid bare for everyone to see. Grace's eyes widened in shock, her lips parted in disbelief, but she remained silent. Jack stood frozen, his smile gone, his eyes filled with shame. The truth was out. In that moment, Emily felt a strange sense of clarity. The weight she had carried for so long was now lifted. She turned to the crowd, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This is the truth," she said, "and now everyone knows what I've known for far too long." The room remained still, the guests in shock, and as Emily looked at Jack and Grace, at the people who had betrayed her, she felt a surge of strength. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the one in control. With a deep breath, she turned and walked away, leaving the lies and the hurt behind her. Free from the chains of betrayal, Emily walked out of that church, her steps confident, her heart unburdened. The truth always has a way of revealing itself, and when it does, it changes everything. But in the end, was it justice or just a woman reclaiming her own power? If this story hit you like it did us, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people. And subscribe if you want more gripping stories every week.